Hello, everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today, I want to talk about consent. More specifically, when getting consent can be a turnoff, because I suppose this is something that people have very strong opinions about. So this all began when I was just minding my own business on twitter.com, as you all know that I shamefully like to do when a viral video popped up on my feed. Someone had shared it with the following caption, quote, "This should be mandatory viewing for all boys on the brink of puberty. Bookmarking it for when my children are old enough." Now, I didn't know who had posted the video, nor did I recognize the woman in it, so my ignorant, eternally hopeful self thought, oh, maybe this is gonna be a nice video about how important consent is. Maybe it's about teaching boys to respect women as autonomous human beings. And, well, I guess it's not that, but it's not what I expected at all either. And before I get too much farther into things, I'm just gonna play you the entire video now because it's not really that long, and we'll talk about it after we all watch it. So enjoy the clip.
Okay, I am the problem. I went on a date with this guy and he was like, "It's getting late. Do you want to come back to my place?" And I was like, "Sure, but I'm not gonna sleep with you. Like, that's not happening." And he was like, "That's totally fine. Just come over." And I was like, "Cool." So I go to his place. He respects my wishes. He's so nice. He cuddles me all night. And I'm like, "Are you gay? Like, what?" And like, I just wanted him to like try, and then for me to be like, "No," you know what I mean? I wasn't gonna sleep with him. But I just, now I feel ugly. This is what. Oh my God.
There's something in this that just really does not sit right with me. I think there is a grain of self-awareness in that last little comment about feeling ugly, and obviously at the start referring to herself as the problem. But no, that is not what the internet glommed onto. Instead, at least on Twitter, the main audience sharing this video around were red pillars, tradwife hunters, and the general manosphere and manosphere fans, I suppose. So, you know that things got bleak pretty quick. The original share on Twitter of this video laughed off the suggestion that not getting affirmative consent would count as assault, calling affirmative consent a freak thing. But probably the most common comment I saw was a man saying how this video is definite proof of the truth that a woman's no for sure means yes. In fact, if she says no, that means yes, more than when she actually says yes. To quote from one particularly telling reply, "Women are literally adult children. They don't know what they want, and because you also don't know what she wants, you are now the problem. These creatures will want you to choke them while you F them, but won't say it. Then call you gay for not choking them." Okay, so firstly, this ties in with the conversation we just had about the rise in the popularity of choking and breath play, so go check out that video if you haven't seen it yet. But oh, they are just really coming out and saying it now, aren't they? They literally don't think that women are the same irrational adults that men are. But quick question though. If women are literally like children, like mentally like children, why do you want to be with them, intimately, so badly? I mean, to me, that would be kind of weird, right? Like, why do you want to connect physically with people that you see as children? Not great, but before I get too bogged down into that, for a moment, let's go back to talking about the video because I do have some thoughts. I'm going to start by addressing this as though it is serious, which it may not totally be, more on that later, but For now, let's address the content of what was said here. The idea that respecting consent is a mistake and will make a woman feel ugly and rejected, and that also, to a certain extent, women expect to play games with saying no when they don't actually mean it. And maybe potential hot take here, I kind of get it. That is more or less the society that we were raised in. Asking for consent ruins the moment. If he doesn't try to aggressively pursue you, he's not that into you. We have countless movies and shows and romance novels to thank for the repeated trope that women have to be overcome and conquered by a big, strong alpha male man, despite whatever they actually say, because they can't possibly know themselves. And in the middle of the 19th century and earlier, to a certain extent, it was understood that saying no until being forced was part of a social game to save face. Desiring sex outside of marriage and pursuing it willfully would have gotten a girl a reputation, but being forced to kiss a man because he just can't help himself? Your standing is going to be a little less tarnished that way. But it's not 1934, baby. It's 2024. Society has moved on, culture has hopefully moved on, and we need to get on the same page that only yes means yes and no means no. Unless, of course, you're in a kink relationship where you agree no doesn't always mean no in certain cases at certain times when you talk about it. But people are still very controlled by this previous social expectation and the messaging that consent ruins good, passionate, uncontrolled moments. That kind of lack of control, that spontaneity, is what always makes good sex. And that knowing when to ignore consent is part of having game and being a masculine man. I think it's actually insightful when she says that she feels ugly when he doesn't try anything with her. That's what we tell people to feel after all. It's that, oh, if he doesn't try hard enough, he's not a man and he's also not that into you. In this context, respecting consent feels like a rejection, even though what it actually is respect. And this is something you can choose to change your perspective on if you want to and you recognize it. I think most of us have struggled with this feeling before, especially in heterosexual relationships where there is a default assumption that men are inherently the pursuers and the ones who are desiring and wanting, and women are inherently the pursued and the desired. One is active, one is passive. Interpreting non-consensual advancement as a positive thing can also be something of a survival technique. At least in American culture, and I know not everywhere is the same, girls often start getting catcalled as young as 10 years old. Heck, probably even younger, but from my personal experience, I know it can start even in elementary school. I had friends that were joking about this in 4th or 5th grade probably. And when you're in a world that tells you that you should feel flattered by that attention because your youth is fleeting and soon that attention will all dry up, it's hard not to listen, even if your gut tells you that it's weird and gross and feels violating. And with how often some people experience catcalling, it would be pretty mentally tough to handle if you didn't think about it in some ways as a good thing. So maybe you start to. And that mentality carries forward into other circumstances, into other relationships. Even if you don't appreciate catcalling, that idea that I should like this attention because it's going to go away someday still can be with you. All of this is to say that it's understandable. Some women would feel put off by their no actually being taken as a no. It's so rare that we literally don't expect it to happen. Thus, we don't account for it in our communication strategy. But, as understandable as that feeling might be, what you don't do is joke about it on the internet. I noticed that several people on Twitter were saying that this video was from a comedian and therefore it was clearly satire, but because the video didn't have a watermark and she didn't post it herself, it was a little bit difficult to track the original one down. I actually started to wonder if it was just one of those things everyone was saying because they had seen someone else say it and then they decided it must be true, but I was eventually able to find the original, which was posted to Instagram and TikTok on the original creator's account. It had actually gained some mild traction on both of those platforms, though not nearly to the level that it did on Twitter. As of when I was writing the script, on Twitter, it had over 50 million views, which is a lot, at least if you're assuming that Twitter is not artificially inflating its view numbers a la Facebook. But it got a similar sort of response with men going, "See, look, this is why women can't be trusted," and most people taking it completely seriously. Looking at the profile, though, the person who made this video, Sienna, does appear to be a comedian, and I've also heard that she's on a podcast, though I didn't really look into that one. Not really relevant for today, but she also might be just trying to elevate her standing on social media. She has clips of her stand-up work on TikTok and on Instagram, but mostly she tends to post little just like daily goofs and gaffs when going about her life. It's definitely a blend of work and making jokes about relatable things and actual life stuff. The line between comedy and truth is very much blurred here, or at least that's sort of the impression I get. She does have a few videos which are similar to the one that we're talking about today, with a few important distinctions that make the joke very clear. One, they are usually posted with hashtag joke or hashtag comedy, and they usually have an obvious blunt twist at the end that makes the humor just nakedly obvious, like joking about having the perfect date with the perfect guy, but then it was just a dream. Or maybe you end the joke by talking about how hard it is to be attracted to your cousin. Clearly, at least I would hope, those things are not really happening. And maybe she thought she was doing the same thing here, stating that she feels ugly was supposed to be that big, obvious, "Hey, look, this is a joke" punchline at the end. But it clearly was not taken that way, and I think she knows that. Unlike her other videos, this one was not given the joke or comedy hashtag either time she posted it on TikTok. She reposted it after it was getting a lot of attention on Twitter, so I suspect that she knew exactly what the discourse was and which audience was finding it at that time. The Instagram version does have a hashtag, but it's buried under a pile of like ... type spaces, which unless you are expanding the whole like description box area. I don't know. Do they call it a description box on Instagram? Whatever it's called on there. Like you have to expand it and look at all the stuff at the bottom to go, "Oh, look, there's the hashtag that tells me this is a joke." And no one was actually looking there. And many, many people did ask her if it was satire, and she did not engage with any of them or respond anywhere that I could see. And I don't know about y'all, but if I had a TikTok that suddenly became unironically very popular with the manosphere men, I would be super quick to clarify that I was joking and to not take what I said seriously. Sienna evidently didn't have the same level of concern. Many of her fans felt the same way because it's just satire, but does this actually count as satire? Now, forgive me, I'm about to commit one of the mortal YouTube sins. I'm gonna discuss the art of comedy. Luckily, I am not and never have been an aspiring comic, so hopefully this won't be too navel-gazy and unbearable, but do you all think this counts as satire? Because in my mind, satire has to be obvious enough that you can tell it's satire, and clearly, 99% of the internet could not do that. Satire is effective only when people can pick up on it. Otherwise, you're just directly promoting the idea you're trying to satirize, which is exactly what happened here. I get the sense that people online have sort of lost the plot on what makes something satire or not, like how POV now means the opposite of POV. It's not satire just because a comic said something they don't really believe or they told a made-up story about themselves. It's satire when it's intentional and successfully performed as such. The audience might start to see the perspective that is being satirized, but there's always sort of like a wink or a nudge that says, hey, this thing you're starting to believe is actually really bad, silly, or wrong. Do you get why now? Satire is not the same thing as trolling, and stand-up comedy is not always satire. Every word out of a comic's mouth is not satire. You can't conflate all of these things together and go, yeah, this thing is fine because it's satire. Like, no, it's not. And the creator of the work never said it was either. A failed attempt at satire, maybe, but that is not it. I suspect it was more just supposed to be like a silly, messy girl talk moment, and when it started to blow up, she was more than happy to let anyone think what they wanted about it. Consequences be danged. And consequences there are indeed. Luckily, alpha males and dating coaches weren't the only ones to find this video. A lot of women found it too, women that were extremely mad that she had made light of something like this in public, when it was obviously going to be used to fuel the belief that consent doesn't matter and should not be applied to women. And they're right. There are consequences to videos like these. On just one platform, again, one post, 50 million people saw this video. People who said they were going to show it to their kids to teach them about women. People who said boys should learn from this. That's a lot of people potentially using this video as training material of the worst possible kind. But somehow, there's even more to it than that. Has anyone else noticed how we're going kind of backwards lately? People are saying the R word openly again. We're using gay as an insult again. Put a pin in that one. Stuff like that. Well, it's also happening with every right that women have ever gotten for themselves. Just pearly things used to be the lone voice saying women shouldn't have the right to vote anymore. And people used to think that it was really silly and funny. But it spread beyond her, and it is now being picked up and repeated by a concerning number of people. Not just influencers, but everyday people and folks with actual influence. And they are using this video as evidence for why women shouldn't be allowed to vote. The manosphere and the trad wife hunters out there have quickly moved from just saying women are too emotional to run a government to women aren't even really adult human beings and they should be seen and not heard. The pace this is happening at should be concerning. And maybe Sienna's in a bubble where this is just not on her radar, but it is happening regardless. We just had a week where not only did people ridicule women for picking the bear over a man in the woods, but some freaking schmuck gave a commencement speech where he said women's true vocation is being at home. He said that during a commencement speech, of all freaking times. And on the bear thing, just as a side note, because I'm not going to make a video about it, I found it extremely telling that the reaction was to belittle women rather than taking a moment to reflect and ask, oh geez, what's going on here? What is making women so afraid of men they would rather be alone with a bear than with a man? Like, I am sorry. I do not need commentary on this matter from the same group of people who delusionally believe they could beat Serena Williams at tennis or defeat a shark with their bare hands. Women are not the only ones who are delusional about their ability levels and safety here, okay? But anyway, the consequences. Let's talk about the consequences. This is a dangerous time to choose profit over being thoughtful with your words. I don't like the argument that we should avoid doing anything that a red pillar might be able to turn into proof for their beliefs, but you do have to consider that a bit more when you're posting videos with the specific intention to gain popularity and attention. At the very least, don't feed into it by refusing to say if it's satire or not. I think that's a pretty fair thing to ask for. And now, let me unpin that pin from earlier because I want to touch on something that is in this that I have not heard anyone speak about. And that was the OMG, what are you, gay comment. The fact that she had to censor it with a flag and everything should have maybe been a sign to not make that joke. But quick check again. What decade am I in? Because it's not 1934. Could it be 2004? Is Bush still president? Did Hillary Duff not sufficiently shame us out of using gay as an insult casually? I mean, she does say that she is bisexual, but I gotta be honest, I don't think that gives you a pass to make gay men the butt of your joke in your maybe sort of satire, sort of comedy video. Maybe she did it to make her character seem more extreme and thus more satire-y? But so many of her TikToks are like this. The whole character is kind of like messy, problematic by girly, and maybe it's not a character and that's just like who she really is. It would not be the first time a messy comic said serious things they actually believe as part of a bit to kind of cover up their actual serious beliefs. But please, as a society, can we not bring back the casual homophobia as a joke? Is it really that hard? I mean, maybe I am overreacting here, but it just really bothered me with how unnecessary it was. Like, what are we doing here? Like, no, just no, don't like it. But just to say it, yes, consent can be sexy. To go back to that earlier point of this whole video, if you can't make asking for consent hot, that is a skill issue and I stick by it. Different people have different ways they like to go about things, but at some point, I believe there should be some kind of process for making sure everyone is down for what you want to do. Unlearning all of the bad lessons we got from media and society is a process, but it can be done, and I would go so far as to say that it should be done. That should be something we take very seriously. And I'm not trying to shame people for having different perspectives, and if you're like, the only way I can ever have a satisfying, intimate interaction is to never talk about it beforehand, even with a stranger, and I go purely on vibes, and that works for me, okay, that's fine for you. But it should not be the standard for everyone in all of society, because that is just going to be rife with issues. I know, like, almost everyone in my personal life, people that I've met at conventions and people that I've met in just the general, community out there, almost everyone has a story that's about a time when consent wasn't clear. One person thought they were, like, reading the room correctly and they were going with the vibe, and the other person was in a totally different place mentally and it was really bad for them, and like there just wasn't a clear way to be able to say, hey, I don't really like this, and if they did say it, it was not always respected and listened to. So yeah, it's fine if you want to do your own thing, but I think as a general rule for society, I think promoting what is going to be safer for the most number of people is the direction we should be going in broadly, because consent as something that is not seen as important, that's a big issue we have. And I think until we change that fact, it's going to be really hard to open up to those times when maybe consent can be a little bit more fluid and dynamic. But anyways, it's not really like everything I want to get into here today, but I think that's kind of where I want to end the conversation. I would love to know your thoughts in a comment down below. If you saw this on TikTok or Twitter, Instagram, wherever you saw it, I'd love to know what your impressions of it were, what you think about this, my analysis, anything I am leaving out. There were certainly a lot of women that were like extremely angry to the point that I think it went too far. Like, I'm not saying that she's a bad person or that she deserves to like suffer or have anything inflicted on her. It's just like, all right, let's just reflect a little bit on the potential impact of our actions. That's all I really want to have happen here. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, I make videos twice a week about all sorts of different kink and BDSM related content. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best you can do that is with Patreon. Link to that will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.